You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak. I'm one of the hosts of the podcast, and I'm joined today by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox.
Hi, how are you today, Rachel?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm really excited about today's podcast. I think this will definitely be something that a lot of our survivors have been wanting and hearing a lot about. So before we introduce today's guest, could you go ahead and give a special shout out to today's podcast sponsor?
Yes, so today's podcast is powered by the Burt Martin Foundation. The Burt Martin Foundation was established to assist those who help others, and they provide financial support for nonprofit organizations. And we're honored to have the Burt Martin Foundation as a long-standing Phoenix Society partner. So thank you so much to that foundation for their ongoing support.
Thank you. And without further ado, I know Emily Gutierrez is our guest for today. Will you tell us a little bit about her, Rachel?
Yes. So Emily is a licensed cosmetologist and IAT certified trichologist. She is the owner of Advanced Hair Loss and Scalp Solutions, LLC, which is a certified hair replacement brand who caters to those who have been impacted by hair loss. Emily and her team work with men, women, and children who have been affected by genetic and traumatic types of hair loss. They utilize modern technology to help prevent hair loss, reverse scalp disorders, and restore one's appearance while building a long-lasting relationship with their clients. So welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Emily. We really appreciate, as Rachel read in your bio, we were hoping that you could tell us a little bit more today kind of about yourself before we get kind of down the path of learning more about the hair loss and scalp solutions that you provide. But could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got started in hair care like this?
Sure. I'm born and raised in Frederick, Maryland. I graduated cosmetology school when I was 18. I relocated to Charleston, South Carolina, doing conventional hair, lots of blonding and cutting. I wasn't fully fulfilled after a year, and that's when I was introduced to hair replacement. At the time, I had no idea that my aunt was wearing hair replacement, and she confided in me, and she really encouraged me to look into it before changing directions of my career. So I did a little bit of research, and I found a certification in South Florida, where I went for about a week and trained. I really fell in love with it. We worked with men and women suffering from hair loss. I then went back to Charleston, South Carolina, with hopes of kind of starting it. But being so young, I didn't feel confident that I was ready to make that move by myself. So that is when I reached out to another company in South Florida, where I later moved on my 20th birthday. And I worked there for about 3.5 years. And we catered to men, women, children of all types of hair loss, genetic to cancer survivors. So after spending about 3.5 years there, I felt really confident that I could move back home to Maryland and really help the Frederick area. And that is when in 2020, I moved back. And unfortunately, that's when we were impacted by COVID. So we shut down for about 3 months before we could reopen. And slowly, we were just able to start offering hair replacement along with some conventional hair as well, just to make some income. And in the past 4 years, we have grown to there are 3 of us. I have a cosmetologist, a barber, and an assistant. And we work predominantly with hair loss for androgenetic, which is just genetic alopecia, but we're hoping to make the transition into the trauma side as we continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, what is a non-surgical hair replacement?
Yeah.
Just the basics.
Yeah. So it's non-invasive, which means there is no surgical procedure done. We have a hair system. We size it to the client's head shape, and we attach it with medical grade adhesive and or tape. Then we color and cut it to their preferred style. The beautiful thing is it's immediate gratification. There is no medical surgery. There's no transplant. We're not doctors. It's a really great solution for really men and women.
Can you tell me more about the process of getting what we call a transplant, like the hair selection? Let's talk through, like, I want to learn more about the tape and what you just mentioned, like the medical grade adhesive. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the medical grade adhesive means that they use this type of adhesive within the body. So it's compatible to be on the outside of the body as well, because when we attach, we're attaching for anywhere from a day to 4 to 6 weeks, no longer than 6 weeks. We recommend that the client comes back in for removal, cleaning, and reattachment. But it is biocompatible and it is very safe for the skin. We have multiple different types of adhesive and tapes available because everyone's scalp environment is differently. Some clients have more oily scalp or a drier scalp. So we have a type of tape or adhesive that is compatible, like I said, with everyone's scalps.
Now, in terms of the hair selection process, if I were wanting to get kind of, how do I choose, right? Like what works best? Do you have things that you keep in house, or do you have a selection process? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have multiple different types of hair qualities available to meet everyone's financial needs. Hair typically starts Indian or Chinese, and we are able to color that to match a client's bio hair color. However, we also can select Italian hair, which is something that's going to be completely virgin. So if they had black curly hair, we could source black curly hair for that client without having to perm it and add the curl with chemicals. So we have a wide variety of hair available for everyone, and all hair can be colored if needed.
That's amazing. And, Emily, just to tell a little bit more about how you first got introduced with Phoenix Society. I know you had reached out because you had worked with a child burn survivor, correct? Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about, I guess, how you are connected to the burn community and kind of how you helped that one survivor?
So my father is a retired firefighter. So I grew up in that household. My husband's a firefighter. My father-in-law, my brother-in-law are all firefighters. And it's just really, it means a lot to me that my family members are able to give back and go into these dangerous situations to help people. And while I will never be a firefighter, with the skill set that I do have, we're able to restore people's confidence, especially those who have been traumatized by scarring alopecia like burns. So about December of 2022, a client had reached out to me via Instagram, and they were located in Miami, Florida. His 2-year-old son had been in a tragic accident involving cooking oil, and it had spilled hot cooking oil had spilled all over him, his head, neck, down his back, and down his arm. He was rushed to the PEDS unit in Colombia. This was in the country of Colombia. And for the first 24 hours, he was in critical condition. And the doctor stated that if he could make it through these 24 hours through all the surgeries and medical attention that he needed, then there was a good chance for survival. But the first 24 hours were crucial. So, of course, for 90 days, he stayed in the PEDS burn center in Colombia, where he was went through major surgeries on his head, face, neck. Unfortunately, he recovered and he was released. They came to Miami. They returned to Miami, where then they started looking into hair replacement, restoring his hair. He lost, I would say, about 30% of his hair on the left side of his head. And they reached out to many doctors, and unfortunately, with him being a 2-3-year-old, it just wasn't possible. He was too young for any type of surgeries, And then they started looking into alternative hair, which is non-surgical hair replacement. They reached out to a colleague who is fantastic in hair replacement, but he was not comfortable working with a child and or the placement of the hair. Typical hair replacement is for genetic alopecia, which is going to be the top of the head. This was the left side above the ear, just a much different, much more sophisticated design. So he referred the Miami family to us. So after doing a few consultations, they took a trip up to us a couple months later, and we did a fit with it's called a skin system. We pretty much used a stock hair system, we designed it to that head, so he could leave with something. We knew we needed to still make a design, but I couldn't do it virtually. He had to be here. So if they made the trip, I wanted to at least let them leave with something while we made a custom hair system for him. So we did a cranial prosthetic by Cesare Ragazzi, CR Lab. It's an Italian brand. We used a fiberglass template to design the left side of his head. We then picked his hair color, hair density, skin color, and we send all of those with 3D scans to Italy, where they hand inject a cranial prosthetic and they send it back to us. Now that process can take 3 to 5 months. So unfortunately, they had to leave with their stock hair system, but they had hopes that they would return in 3 to 5 months to see his custom prosthetic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know for me, I was burned when I was a child, and I still have a little bit of a bald spot on my head, but the whole top of my head was burned. And I think I had shared with you before, Emily, I had to get tissue expanders, which I don't know if all burn survivors know what those are, but if you've had them, you know how painful and agonizing that surgery, well, it's multiple surgeries, can be. So I love the idea of something non-invasive, especially for children, or even, for me, it was just part of my head, which I think is amazing that you don't have to do, I guess, the whole head in terms of like what a wig most of the times has to do.
Exactly. Yep. And the doctors had said maybe when he was 15, they had hoped for more modernized technology, maybe something else that they could offer him. So they didn't completely, unfortunately, shut him down. But in that interim for the next decade, it was kind of like, we can't help you at such a young age. And that's why it's really nice to have alternative options, like having invasive surgeries and having more cosmetic, non-surgical types of solutions.
Yeah.
So Emily, with that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
No, I was just going to say that's a really good point, because I was burned when I was 3. I didn't get my tissue expanders until I was in second grade. I don't know how old you are, but
6 or 7 probably.
Yeah. So, and I'm pretty, I don't know how much the head grows from 6 to 7 to when you're an adult, but I would have never signed up to do that again. And also, I'm sure as an adult, that pain, I kind of don't remember as much of it as I would have if I did it when I was 18. So that's a really great thing I didn't even think about, of just having something in the interim as well.
Yeah. I mean, if this client could find something more permanent where they don't have to wear prosthetics for the rest of their life, I think that's a winning situation. But we really have to work together over these next 10, 15 years until he is of age, and if he can receive, a stretch or some type of transplant for his head. But typically with something maybe on the left side of the head, which is really this whole portion, they may have a hard time transplanting hair from this side to here, just because we're used to transplanting from here to the top of the head, which is something that's a lot more normal. So that's definitely something that the doctors are going to have to really think on when that time comes. But he was going to school for the first time. I think he's 4 or 5, and he was starting kindergarten or preschool, and his dad said, I want him to feel normal. He's a child. He doesn't understand, but other kids will notice. And I want my son to be able to look back and say, my dad did everything possible to make me have a normal childhood. Because every day when he wakes up and looks in the mirror, he's constantly reminded of the trauma that he endured at such a young age. Not only him, but his parents as well. And that's something that when you have to live through it day to day is so hard on your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So for the hair systems, I know you said you made a hair system, like a temporary one for him. And I know we talked a little bit about how they do have to like get it replaced, right? Every like I think you said 6 weeks. Is that correct? Or up to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that like you have to apply, or that like if someone lives not local, they could do it themselves, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So the temporary hair system, I think it lasted him about, I would probably say 3 months to 5 months, but we used medical tape for his system. I wasn't comfortable using adhesive, and they live in Miami, so there was no care. I could not help them. So had he stayed in that type of system, he probably would have need 2 or 3 a year. With the advanced prosthetic that he is in, his hair system can last an upwards of 2.5 to 3 years on the same system. Now, we have colleagues all over the country and all over the world that we're able to send our clients to. So I reached out to the Miami colleague and I shared his story, and she is now able to service him on a monthly basis, really make sure that they're cleaning the system, doing a deep sanitation within the studio, things to ensure longevity on the system, because they're very, very, very nice prosthetics too. So you want to make sure you can care for it to the best of your ability.
Mm-hmm.
And the prosthetic itself, is it a little bit different? Is that something that gets adhered to differently, or is it the same kind of technique?
So it's kind of the same technique. In hair replacement, the goal is to take a hair system and bond it to the scalp with medical adhesive. Now, the cranial prosthetic by Italy, the CR Lab CNC, they have their own set of adhesives and tapes. So we definitely stay within their brand, their protocol to doing service, maintenance, installations. With other types of hair replacement, like the ones that we would probably see more from Hair Club for Men or John Renault wigs, they all have a very similar adhesive. We kind of can just use something from a middleman company called Walker Tape. So they kind of cater to everyone, whereas CR Lab, they have their own set of products.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So can you, once, you've gone through the process, it's, I shouldn't say like installed, but placed on your scalp and everything, everything is looking exactly how you want. Can you, I guess, what limitations would someone have? Like, can you work out? Can you sweat normally? What about like shampoo and conditioner? Like, do you have to use special products, or what some of that like aftercare like?
So the beauty of the CNC is that Aiden will be able to live a very normal life, to the point where he'll probably forget that he's even wearing a prosthetic. He can play on the playground. He can, he can travel with his parents. He can play in the pool and the beach, and he doesn't have to worry. The adhesive is waterproof, so we don't have to worry about that. He can ride roller coasters, he can live a very normal life. And that's the really amazing thing. Now with caring for the CNC, when it's attached to the head, you can shampoo it and condition it and use products like gels. CR Lab has a daily care line to use the right products for maintaining it, of course. But even for a woman, we could still use a blow dryer. We can still use a curling iron and a flat iron, as long as we're protecting that hair, just like our bio hair. We don't want to fry our hair off. So as long as we're still using really high quality products and heat protectants and hairsprays, then it will be fine. But there are no limitations with the prosthetic.
That's awesome. Because I know a lot of, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this too. Burn survivors will often, who have hair loss, and maybe this is more complete hair loss, will often turn to wigs as, a way to have a full head of hair. But there's obviously limitations with wigs. And I mean, just even talking about like rolling a roller coaster, things like that. I guess I didn't really even think about for kids, some of those like small fun activities. And a kid's not going to think like, oh, let me make sure that my wig's on if they're at the roller coaster with all their friends. Like that's not something they're thinking about.
Exactly. And another thing is a young boy is not going to wear a wig. We're thinking females. A young female could get away with wearing a wig, but a young boy is not going to wear a wig. And that's why the non-surgical hair systems, we can design something that's super small, or we can design a full cap, just like the size of a wig. And we can attach all of it, and we don't have to remove any hair. Now with burns, of course, there's scarring alopecia, so no hair will grow back. But if there were hair, we had to design something over top of some of the bio hair, we don't have to shave any hair. So that's also a really awesome component to wearing hair replacement.
Yeah, because sometimes too, for men and women, they'll have sometimes patches. Like for me, I had one big bald area, but I know some survivors will have multiple patches where they don't have hair or things like that. So that's awesome that they can even still be, they don't have to shave their head necessarily to get the full replacement.
Exactly. Yep. We can design around the bio hair, and for comfort, if they choose hair removal, then we can design a prosthetic to attach, even if there is no hair or if there is hair. It's just different methods of attachment. So I think it's really great because it's so versatile. Like I said, for any age or any gender.
Now, for the prosthetic, is that something that the insurance, like they can submit to their insurance? Or is this something that like is not a pocket cost?
So you can definitely submit to your insurance. What you want to do is contact your insurance companies, and there are specific codes for cranial prosthetics. You never want to call it a wig, because a wig to them is considered cosmetic and not necessary. So you want to always call it a cranial prosthetic and submit with certain codes. They should then tell you what they cover. Some places will cover 50%, or some will give $100 a year. So every insurance company is completely different. I will say medical cranial prosthetics are very hard to get coverage for, and it's very unfortunate. Most insurances cover chemotherapy related wigs or cranial prosthetics, which is unfortunate because typically once you go through chemotherapy, your hair will grow back. With scarring alopecia, your hair does not grow back. So it's a little backwards, and I'm hopeful that in the future we can kind of influence that and influence change. But anyone who is seeking out a cranial prosthetic should start with the insurance companies. Once they have their answer, whether that be a percentage or an allotment, they then take a prescription from a doctor saying that they need a cranial prosthetic. They'll take our invoice or an invoice from any prosthetic designer, and then they submit that to the insurance company. And most of the time you wait for reimbursement, and that's how that works. There's another way of financing through cosmetic credit cards. So one is called Advanced Care Credit. I think one is called just Care Credit in general. That will be through the company. So we have Advanced Care Credit, which is a 0% interest-free credit card for 15 months. You can finance it. So we have a few ways that we could finance the prosthetic if the client needs it.
Gotcha. So in terms of if someone's listening to this, they are excited, they want to explore this option, what's kind of a first step? Like, do they contact you? Or I know we'll have your website linked in our show's description, or their local, I guess, rep. But is that the first step? Do they need to talk to their insurance first? Or I guess, what's that first step look like?
Yeah, I recommend doing some research to your local city. Most big cities have some type of cranial prosthetic designer or specialist. There's also a website called American Hair Loss, which is ahlc.org. And you can type in if you're looking for a transplant doctor, or if you're looking for a trichologist, or if you're looking for a non-surgical hair replacement technician like me, they will show you within a 5-mile or 60-mile radius, everyone within that. Then you could reach out to to that business and see if they offer what type of service that you're looking for. That would be option one. If you are looking for an advanced prosthetic, there's about 45 of us in the US that carry this product. They have a website called crlab.com, and you can then enter your zip code and it will show the closest CR Lab partner that is local to them. Those would probably be my top two ways of going about it. If anyone ever contacts us, we have people that contact us from other countries. We do our best to find them a local specialist. Everyone is welcome to travel to us. We've had people fly from all over the country. We love it. But of course, realistically, we want to find you someone that's local to them. So like I said, they're in the major cities, especially on the East and West Coast. Central US is, we're getting there. We're growing slowly. But you can find a prosthetic designer pretty easy within each state.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure we have all of those links below too, just to get some more information and see if they are a good fit. So, and I guess that's kind of one question I did want to ask too, and maybe specifically if you can talk a little bit more for burn survivors, but who makes a good candidate for one of these prosthetics?
Mm-hmm. I think that any survivor is a great candidate for a prosthetic. Like I said, there are no limitations, and it's okay if you have 10% of your hair or you've lost or you have a whole head. We can make something that fits to you. I think the one thing that needs to be known is that there is maintenance involved. You don't just buy a prosthetic and go and you never see your designer again or your specialist again. You still need to follow up. So there is a little bit of work involved in caring for it and styling it and just making sure that you're keeping it as clean as possible. But other than that, you could be as young as 3, like Aiden was, or we've worked with people in their 90s who wear prosthetics, who still bonded on with medical adhesive, and they love it. So I really don't think that I think everyone's a great candidate, really.
I know you had a prop with you earlier. Now, is that something that would be considered a prosthetic? Or is that like, can you share more about that with us?
Yes. So this is a CNC by CR Lab. This is a cranial prosthetic. This is about 14 inches of virgin hair. We have selected a medium density on this hair system with fine denier hair, which means there is fine hair shafts, but a medium density injected into the polymer base. We also have selected a very neutral scalp tone. For a fair tone, this lady is actually in her 80s. She's very fair tone. So we're able to select a low density with a matching scalp tone to match her skin. And this is a top of the head base. So this is going to be placed right on the top of the head. This specific client has androgenetic alopecia though. But all cranial prosthetics that come from CR Lab will look like this. There is one universal base. It's made out of a polymer. And then we send a die-cast from that client. And that is how they size the CNC, along with 3D scans. The machine's in my back corner here, but every partner has a 3D scanner where it takes angles from every side of the cranial so they can capture it and remake a head template. This client's template is their exact shape of their head. So every curvature is the client's head to ensure that it fits perfectly. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then that client will come in and you will like help make sure it fits, correct? Like in terms of the process for once that's made, it'll be shipped to you and then you help her fit it. Yep. So the initial consultation, then we do what's called the parameter appointment, which is where we use the fiberglass material to design the shape of the hair loss pattern. We then send out all the specs, the hair length, the hair color, hair density, etc., to Italy. Within 3 to 5 months, they send us back the CNC. the client will come in. We'll do preparation on the scalp, making sure it's as balanced as possible, clean it. We use a few different pieces of technology to really ensure that the scalp environment is to the best of its ability. And then we use whatever medical grade adhesive that we have chosen for that client, and we attach it. We then start cutting in and styling.
Awesome.
I love how customizable it is. Not only that it fits your head perfectly, but the scalp color and hair type. And I mean, I know there's so many different types of wigs out there, but you're not going to ever find something exactly the same as what your team can produce.
Exactly. We have been really blessed that this technology has been brought to the U.S. It was originally in Italy for 50 years. And fortunately, they enabled us to partner with them and really promote their product because it's life altering. And it makes the client feel like it's theirs. So many clients, once it's attached, they can't even tell it's there. And people don't even know. It's just completely different than any person that's ever tried to wear a wig or an extension. It's nothing like it. So we're really blessed to have this technology and really try to promote it in the medical side, like the burn side, because if anything, they're the ones with the hair that's definitely not growing back.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the difference, of this system versus a wig, for instance? What is the difference between those? And how might someone choose what they want to use? Because I know there are survivors out there that use just wigs, right? They have to go and purchase different types of wigs. Why might someone choose this one over a wig system?
The main difference is going to be the size of the base. So the wig is going to be full head every time. With the prosthetic, we can design any size and shape. So we can do a full cap or just a topper. The second biggest quality is the hair. Wig hair is probably going to be your Remy human hair, maybe European hair if you can find a really great vendor, which means that the hair started black or dark brown. In the factories, they use bleach to bleach it to brighter colors, and then they use textile dyes to deposit back your browns and your blondes. The reason that's so important is because it affects the integrity of the hair. So maybe it starts out soft and for 3 months it's soft, but if you have a high processed blonde wig, in 6 to 9 months, it's not going to be nearly as soft as it was on day one. With the CNC, the virgin hair, because there is no alterations to it, the integrity of the cuticle is still intact. Virgin hair, there is no chemical alterations, so it will remain soft and move like human hair would after a year, after 2 years. And that's probably going to be your biggest difference between wearing a wig and wearing a prosthetic. And then, of course, the method of attachment. You can attach a wig with, lace tape or a certain adhesive on the hairline, but it is not for long term.
And how long does the CNC last? What is the timeline of the hair on that? Is it something that has to be eventually replaced?
Yeah, we can repair the CNC. The factory says about 2 times. It really depends on why we're sending it back. If it's just gentle wear and tear or it's lost some hair, 100% that they can repair it. If the base is completely destroyed from neglect, then typically you would need a brand new CNC.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I would say it really depends because the CNC can be bonded long-term for 4 to 6 weeks. When that is happening, we're noticing about a year of constant wear before needing a repair. We recommend having 2 prosthetics though, because if we send for one for repair, then you still need to wear something while it's being repaired because the repair can take 3 months. But the good thing is that when the repair comes back, it's not quite brand new, but it looks beautiful.
This is probably maybe a dumb question, but let's say someone gets a partial prosthetic on their head. How does that work with your other hair growing and haircuts?
Yeah.
Like, how do they have to come back to you to get those haircuts? Or I guess I'm just thinking of folks who are maybe in the Midwest who are further away from someone, but can travel to get something like this done.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Yeah. So your bio hair will still definitely grow. So if we're using a topper, we can stick to that as a great example. Your bio hair, everything underneath is still going to grow. So you'll still want to maintain a haircut with that. Typically, because you're coming in for service once a month, we remove the system, clean the prosthetic. We clean your bio hair. We can color the bio hair if you have gray hair and you color your hair. Then we reattach the prosthetic again. With the length of the prosthetic, it hasn't changed. It's not growing. So then we just change the length of your bio hair. We bring it up. We layer it, whatever we need to do to make it blend like the first day. Personally, most colleagues who are CR Lab partners are also hairdressers. If they are not a hairstylist, then they have someone that is a hairstylist that works within their company, of course. So you can get maintained, your color, your cuts within a CR Lab center. Some partners are okay with, if you've had the same hairdresser for 20 years and you still want her to cut your hair, she's okay with it. As long as the CNC does not get messed up is really the most important part. Is we just don't want any damage to the CNC. But like I said, we would be doing all the maintenance on the CNC, all the rebonding, all the cleaning of it. And if you went to another hairdresser, maybe that's just because they're going to trim your bio hair.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I'm sure, I didn't have it with my hair, but the burn center I went to growing up was like 8-10 hours away from where I lived. So my primary care doctor, like my family doctor, didn't come with me to my hospital to learn, but was willing to like work with them, and they collaborated. So I'm sure that's similar here, that as long as you have someone you trust and is willing to help, you can definitely make that happen.
Yeah, especially if you've created a relationship with a hairstylist for a number of years before a trauma has happened, and you still want them to be a part of, your routine. We've outsourced color to other hairdressers, especially those hairdressers that have referred their clients to us. We still, we want them to still be a client of their previous hairstylist. So we find a way to work together. But when it comes to the prosthetic, we take full responsibility of it.
It's awesome. Well, and I'm sure that's really important too, because, this is an investment. It's not just going and getting your hair done and changing it to a new style. It's truly an investment, and can be a lifelong investment if you take care of these products. So you don't want to just go to anyone.
So
Exactly.
Emily, everyone is further away, right? Like we have podcast listeners all over the country. I'd love to learn more about kind of the approach. Would you recommend that they contact you and then you can direct them to maybe a center that's closest to them? I know you had mentioned like regular maintenance on those CNCs. So if someone doesn't have a center near them, is it still possible for them to get one and still be able to deal with it? Or is it something where they do have to have like a center close by to have that like repair and cleaning?
It's protocol to have it serviced by a CR Lab center. I know that there are some clients who travel hours or will hop on a plane once a month to be serviced. Typically, if there's no one around, it puts us in a very hard position. Maybe we won't, maybe the CNC isn't the solution for them. Maybe putting them into a different brand of hair, and we can send them to another non-surgical replacement tech, because they seem to be everywhere. We're growing in that aspect of the industry, but as far as partners for CR Lab is limited, and we really have to refer them and have a center that can care for them. So it's really up to the client if they are going to choose to travel monthly for the care of their hair. If not, then we can give them a different solution, just not within the brand. I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out to help find a center near them, if that's the easiest route for them, because we're speaking and I'm not meeting them directly, but they're learning about me. They can contact our studio, and within 24 hours, we're happy to get them a response of a close center that could probably help them. And I'm always opening to doing virtual consultations, even if they have no intentions of coming.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Before we close out, I think I just want to open it up. Is there anything else about whether it's like hair replacement or anything else, maybe other technology at your center that you want, to share with us, or anything maybe about just hair loss in general that you want to let everyone know before we kind of end with our final questions today?
I think the biggest thing is that there is a solution out there for everyone. And if you've been impacted by hair loss, whether it be genetic or trauma, to not let it affect you or ruin your life. There really is a solution out there for everyone, and you should not stop searching for it. Even if you don't think your hair is a big part of your identity, I can tell you that once you have a hair system attached, you feel brand new, and your confidence is restored, your mental health increase. It just, you become a healthier individual, and that's so important. And to not wake up and look in the mirror and be reminded that this is what I have, this is what I was born with, or this was a tragic event that happened to me 10 years ago, and here I am still dealing with it. And if you go to a doctor and you feel like they don't give you much help, to not stop looking, because there are solutions. It just might not be very well known to the public, but hopefully with sharing and social media, we can really get the word out there that prosthetics are a great solution for anyone dealing with hair loss.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today, because I wasn't aware that this was a solution. So I think this will be really helpful for a lot of our survivors to kind of learn more about. Well, as we close out the podcast today, I know we always ask our survivors 2 quick questions. So the first, I guess, would be, and I know you helped the young boy that you were talking about. And so we talked a little bit about his parents, right? And how it helped his parents feel more confident. But I'm sure in the variety of folks that you treat and help, I'd love to know more about your perspective and how it is for like the caregiver or loved one to see the person that you're helping like feel renewed with this new hair. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what impact, maybe a hair replacement has on a loved one or a caregiver?
Yeah. I think that as a caregiver, I've never personally been a caregiver, but a lot of times we have a parent come or a friend come or that support system come, and being that emotional support system through that transition, because it is a very hard transition too. Majority of clients are very unsure at first, but they grow to love it. So having that support system of someone you can confide in, whether you plan on telling people that you wear a prosthetic or you want to keep it more a secret, having that support from the caregiver is super, super crucial. But I think from their aspect, caring for someone who may be suffering from depression or just down in life because of everything they've been through, seeing them feel more confident and happy with their life because they've got their identity back and they can go to the store without people looking at them, or a little girl saying, "What's wrong with his face?" I think from that aspect, it's really healing for them too, because they're dealing with that person every single day as well. And they, I'm sure, want them to be their most happy, fulfilled self. So it's really great to see support systems come in and go through the transition and the process of receiving a prosthetic.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
And I know for me too, I'm someone who can get shy, even if I'm the one who is getting the prosthetic, for example. I get shy and don't want to ask my questions. So even just having a friend or a loved one there to ask the questions, the hard questions you are maybe too shy to ask, can always be.
Or when you're telling, like, I feel like I get instructions sometimes, and like if I don't have someone else there, I turn around and I'm like, what was it that they just told me? So I think it's always good to have a support system so that they can help you remember like things that you were instructions because you're so excited or maybe overwhelmed in the moment that you tend to forget things. So that's important.
I've had a client not literally black out, but emotionally black out and miss everything, all the instructions of it. And, you know, we're happy to repeat them. And still 6 months later, she was like, I still black out during our services sometimes because I just love the after. I love what 2 hours in your chair does for me. The 2 hours during it, being reminded of what I've been through, that's really hard. So I tend to just not be here or not look in the mirror. But when we can turn them around with their hair system attached again and their appearance restored, it's a really good feeling.
Definitely.
I agree.
So our final question, it is our Phoenix partner question, which today is sponsored by the Burt Martin Foundation, an organization dedicated to assisting nonprofits and the communities they serve. So their question is, what is one thing that always brings a smile to your face, no matter how tough your day has been? And it doesn't have to be hair care related.
I have been doing this for so long, and I will say giving a good hair color is a really good feeling. But restoring one's appearance is probably the best feeling, and just a gift that God's given me. And that will forever always be the best thing. And that brings a smile to my face when I see that my clients are just really happy. So
that's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today. Emily, we will absolutely put information about your website, about the CR Lab, and really more information kind of about the broad spectrum of services that you've talked to us about today, as well as your contact information. So anyone that's listening or watching our podcast today can certainly get in touch with you. And we genuinely appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is a great opportunity to really get the word out there. So hopefully we can help at least one survivor.
Awesome. Thank you again, Emily. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it.